everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and today I'm here with my Victober Wrap-Up. Now, I read some really lovely books for Victober, but I also felt like a lot of them were fairly hit or miss. I don't know if it's the time of year, if my anxiety was getting the best of me, especially with everything going on in the US. Even the light has felt strange recently. It's just a very weird time of year, but I will do my best to tell you all about my Victober reads. I am here in my other Victober shirt to celebrate the end of the month. And yeah, let's get started. So firstly, my two audiobooks of the month were not planned for Victober, but one of them, in fact, fit, and it was finally finishing Our Mutual Friend by Charles Dickens. I have been reading this since August, mainly by listening to audiobook, but I finally finished it at the beginning of October, and then had a very long rant about it to my friend Veronica in the car that night. We had tickets to a comedy show right afterwards. I know people adore Our Mutual Friend. I quite like Dickens as a writer, but this, for me, was not one of his best works. It centers around John Harmon, the Golden Dustman, although, quite honestly, that was never explained terribly well, so I feel like I might possibly be conflating two separate characters. Anyway, this very rich man leaves a lot of money to a lot of different people in his will, with various caveats, and it's mainly looking at how money and class intersect or don't intersect, how the having or not having of money can change people for the better and for the worse. All of those themes I thought would be really, really interesting, and there were brilliant moments, but there were too many other elements that I found really, really difficult to swallow. There were a lot of typical Dickens subplots that I didn't feel necessarily enhanced the themes of this book. The anti-Semitism was off the charts. If Oliver Twist made you uncomfortable, some of the views that these characters express are even worse. One of our main female characters I found too good and too trusting, and it was just sickeningly sweet. I did quite like Jenny Wren. I feel like she was the only person in here with any kind of sense. And then the plot twist at the end surrounding not one, but two mistaken identities, not even mistaken, purposely occluded identities, was just preposterous. And I know Dickens tries to excuse that away in his epilogue by saying, oh, well, stranger things have happened in real life, I'm sure. Really, Dickens? Really? I doubt, even in the Victorian age, that anyone could have that many aliases. So while I am glad to have read it, and I respect anyone who says it's their favorite, it was just not for me. The other audiobook I picked up just for a bit of light fun, because I was already reading several Anthony Trollope books, so I didn't want to continue listening to the Palliser series just yet. I found that I could get a couple of Boldwood Books' romances on audiobook through my library. So I decided to borrow What the Lady Wants by Emma Orchard as a light, fun Regency romance to listen to. This was not a hit either. Now, ordinarily, I don't mind spicy romances. The spice level on this one made even me uncomfortable. I think having it as an audiobook made it more uncomfortable than just reading it on the page. But the spiciness starts in chapter 1 as well. They put it right out there, they are not hiding it, which completely took me by surprise. I feel like there should be a little bit of a build-up. Then I discovered there in fact is. It started in media res and then backtracked to a few days before. The basic premise of this book is that our heroine is a young widow. Her husband was killed in the Battle of Waterloo, and she has now returned to England. She has gone through about a year or two of really deep depression, but has managed to come out the other side of it and has decided that she wants to take charge of her life for a little bit while she is in town before she retires in anonymity to her parents' estate for the rest of her life. She has no desire to remarry or do anything else with her life after this, but she wants to create some memories for herself that she knows will be lasts. So she approaches Captain Frederick Winterton, was that his name? As the cousin of a friend. So she's vetted his family. She knows that he is probably a safe bet. And she approaches him with a proposition. She has created a list of things she would like to do before she goes into this self-imposed retirement. Most of these things are sexual things she would like to do before she so retires. And she wants him to be her partner if he would agree to it. He does agree to it because, number one, he cannot fathom anyone else being her partner for these. And number two, he has been in love with her since the first time he saw her before Waterloo many years ago. You can see where this is going to end up. And in the style of most romance novels, it was completely predictable, but this time not in a pleasant way. Usually romance books are predictable, but in a pleasant way where you know there's going to be some sort of happy ending. You can detect a trope here or there, but there are still some things that surprise you. There were no pleasant surprises in this book. A lot of the decisions that were made were a bit too trite. I didn't like the way that everything was concluded, even though it was a happy ending. Yeah, it was not one of my favorite romance novels, unfortunately. I will caveat, I did listen to some of it while I was sick, which may have clouded my judgment, but overall, not my favorite. And I discovered, because it is so spicy, I could not listen to it at work the way I typically do with audiobooks. On my breaks, obviously, but even so, not with this one. Then we get into my proper Victober TBR that I did manage to finish this year, which I feel very relieved about. I did not manage that last year. The first book that I read, which was a play for Roz's prompt, was Mrs. Warren's Profession by George Bernard Shaw. This is a play about a young woman who is coming to terms with the fact that her mother is a very successful madam of not just one brothel, I believe, but a chain of brothels, possibly. The daughter, in fact, is going to university, trying to create a life for herself, but she has to come to terms with the fact as well that everyone knows that this is what her mother does, that she will never know who her father was. And that casts some serious problems in terms of her ever getting married or even being truly respected by people outside of their circle. And B, that the money that is making it possible for her to go to university, to have this cottage to live in while she studies, comes from her mother's business. And I really liked all of those themes. I just didn't love the way it was executed always, especially the ending. There was something about the ending that left me really uncomfortable, which is a trend with a lot of Shaw's work. Pygmalion and even My Fair Lady has always left me feeling the same way. And I think that's the point of them. But even so, not being able to see it performed made that even more unsatisfying. If you know of a good place where I can watch a production of this, please let me know, because I searched and I just couldn't find any. Then for a book that played with form for Katie's prompt, I read, as per her suggestion, The Struggles of Brown, Jones, and Robinson by Anthony Trollope. And this is written as though it's one of these members or another man who was involved with this firm writing about its rise and fall. In terms of playing with form, I didn't think that it played with form too much, not certainly as much as other books that were recommended. And I found that I didn't enjoy this as much as I typically enjoy other Trollope novels, simply because I find that Trollope novels take a while to get into. You really have to ride with them for about 100, 150 pages before you really get into the story and really get invested in it. However, because this one was so short, you never really hit that point, and I never felt myself as drawn to these characters, no matter how flawed they might be, as with some of his other series that I've read. I did like the insight that we got into running a business in the Victorian era, in terms of how much marketing has not changed at all since the Victorian era. The love story I thought was okay. I thought it was an interesting take for a Victorian romance plotline, but yeah, overall it was just okay. Wasn't one of my favorites, but I'm glad I read it, and I will certainly keep it, given that it is rare to find a physical copy of this. Also for the playing with form, but also for the Collins or Doyle prompt, I picked up this collection of 3 of Wilkie Collins's novellas, really. Miss or Mrs. The Haunted Hotel and The Guilty River. I really enjoyed The Woman in White. I did not enjoy the way Wilkie Collins wrote women, especially Marion's character, but I appreciated the storyline and I found it really compelling and really intriguing. These stories did not do that for me. Again, I was reading them while I was not feeling well, which may have colored my judgment, but I could not follow these plot lines, which meant that the reveals often fell flat for me because there wasn't enough suspense built up for me. And yeah, I don't think Wilkie Collins is for me. The Moonstone has been spoiled for me, so I have no desire to read that one. I enjoyed The Woman in White, and beyond that, I don't think I'm going to go any further with any of his short stories or other works. The highlight of Victober, however, which feels strange to say given its plot, was reading He Knew He Was Right by Anthony Trollope. This I thought I was going to love, and I am very glad to say that I did. Again, because of its plot lines, I didn't love it as much as The Way We Live Now, or Barsetshire, or what I've read of the Pallisers so far, but I am really, really glad to have read it, and I think it still holds up well next to all of those other works. This is the story of the Trevelyan's, who married quite young. Mrs. Trevelyan is the daughter of a governor somewhere on an island nation. It's known as the Mandarins. I'm not sure where exactly in the world today that's meant to be, whether it's in Southeast Asia or in the Caribbean, but nonetheless, Louis Trevelyan meets her there, they marry, they move back to London. It's been about a year, they have a small son, and Louis Trevelyan becomes convinced that his wife is having an affair with one of her father's dear friends, Colonel Osborne. She is not, in fact, having an affair with Colonel Osborne. However, they are both so stubborn that they refuse to give way, which of course only makes the situation worse. And Colonel Osborne is one of those men who is quite flattered to still be thought of as a danger and a lady killer. So he rather throws gasoline on an open flame as well. And the situation devolves from there. But in typical Trollope fashion, not only are we dealing with what the back described as kind of a modern-day Othello storyline, which I think is a great way to describe it, but we're also following surrounding characters. We are following Mrs. Trevelyan's sister, who is living with them, and her romantic woes. And then the man that she is in love with, we follow his mother and sisters and great aunt as they become entangled in the story. We follow the other man who is also interested in Nora and his exploits elsewhere in Europe, and eventually they do all come together again. So that at least is wonderful to know. If you were thinking that that storyline sounded absolutely infuriating and you could not endure 800 pages of it, it is broken up by those other storylines, which makes it a lot more bearable. Overall, I liked the way it ended, which, knowing how it ends, feels very weird to say, but I think that a kind of justice was served. I'm still not sure how I feel about how Mrs. Trevelyan reacted to that, but then again, I'm not sure how I would react if I were in that situation either, so I can't really blame her too much. But if you were thinking about reading this, it is well worth it. And now I just have to find that adaptation that I tried to watch all those years ago, because now I can't find it anywhere. So if anyone knows of a place where I can watch it, again, let me know down below so I can do that. So those were all of the books that I read in October. Let me know down below what your favorite Victober read was, or what your favorite read of October was if you did not participate in Victober. And until next time, be safe, be well, and happy reading. Bye everyone.